Coucou les amis, it's Camden. Hello friends, welcome back to the Baguettes and the Bicyclettes YouTube channel. It's been a while since I've done a sit-down chit-chat type of video, but you know, it's pretty much summer break in a few days for me, and I thought I'd update you on what's been going on in my life and how this year has gone in Paris so far. So on Instagram a few days ago, be sure to check out my Instagram page where I post more day in the life things of Paris and my travels in France. But anyway, on my Instagram, I asked, I did like a little Q&A type thing. I asked you all what questions you had for me, and I wrote some of them down. I'm filming with my phone right now, that's why I would normally have it on my phone and look at the questions there, but right now I'm going to just read what I wrote down. So the first question is the most asked question, which is, what are my summer plans? So tomorrow is actually my last day of class of the school year, and I have a couple of meetings left. My last meeting is just next week, and after that I actually decided to book a little solo trip. I'm not going to say where it is yet, but it's somewhere I've been before. Very naturey. Yeah, I just needed to get out of Paris. I have a love-hate relationship with Paris, I think, but I just needed a little getaway for myself, and so I'm excited about that. Then later this month, some family is going to come visit me, and then we'll do a little tour of some other European cities, which I'm super excited about because, you know, living abroad, I don't see my family super often, so it'll be really fun to see them again and explore some new places. Again, I'm not going to say exactly where yet because it's not all planned, but I'll share it. I feel like I'm not being very exciting sharing everything with you, but you know, it is what it is. I would also like to go on a couple of trips with friends. One friend and I were talking about doing a little beach road trip in the south of France because we both miss it so much. Another friend is coming to visit in July, and I don't know, I'll probably meet up with her. Resting, definitely I'm going to rest a lot, and then, you know, probably have to review what I'm going to teach for the next school year, just so I can be a little bit more prepared than I was going into this school year. Maybe after all of those France and Europe travels, I'll go back to the US. I'm thinking in August sometime. I'm not sure though, because I am waiting to see what plane ticket costs are like. Another thing I have to do this summer before I can travel internationally is renew my residency card. So this is called the carte de séjour, and I have to do it every year because of the type of visa I have. I'm a temporary worker because I have a fixed term contract right now, so that means my residency card is only as long as my work contract is, so it's basically a year long, so every year I have to renew it. Next question is from a fellow YouTuber, Blah Blah Katie. She asks, where do I draw the line between what I share and what I don't share online? And I think that's a really good question. Honestly, I don't share that much of my life online. I'm not a full-time influencer or blogger. I'm not even an influencer. I don't get paid to do blogging or YouTube or anything. I just do it for fun. So a lot of the time I am at work or resting, and I don't have the mental or physical energy to share everything. Also, I don't want to share everything. Sometimes I'll let you know if I'm going through a bad time or not feeling well, just to show you, you know, like, life in Paris is not Emily in Paris. It's real. I do boring things sometimes. Life is not always fun here. I do use Instagram and YouTube as a highlight reel. I like to share things that make me happy, photos of places I've been, videos of little trips, because it's just a good way for me to reminisce on my time here in France, but also, you know, share with you all recommendations for places. I don't share super personal information that, you know, someone could use against me. Talk about super personal details about my relationship. For example, I do have a French boyfriend, but he's more private, so I don't share his life online or anything about our relationship online, really. I don't share where exactly I live in Paris because, you know, I do want to be safe. There are some weirdos out on the internet. Next, Anne asked me what my least favorite part about living in Paris is, and that's probably that it is not close to any mountain or beach. So I think the closest beach is in Brittany, and it's probably like maybe like 2 hours away by train. So I mean, you technically could do a day trip there, but it'd be pretty exhausting. And I'm not sure what the closest mountains are. You know, the TGV high-speed train from Paris can get you pretty quickly to different destinations, so that's one good thing, is that it's pretty connected. But yeah, definitely not as accessible to nature. Like, I can't just decide one morning like, oh, I want to go on a hike. You really have to plan for it. Or like, it's getting really warm right now, so it's like, oh, I just want to go swim in the beach. But swim in the beach, swim in the sea, go to the beach, again, can't do that on a whim. You really have to plan for it. She also asked differences teaching in France versus in the USA. So I originally did my teacher training in the US, so I have done lots of practicums and I did my student teaching there. And let's see, one thing that comes to mind is the schedule. In the US, you are there from like the start of the school day to the end of the school day. And if you don't have classes during a certain hour, that's typically your planning time. And in France, since I work in the secondary level, my full-time contracted hours are 18 hours of teaching per week. The lesson planning is not scheduled into that time. Sometimes meetings, you might get paid a little extra. But for example, if I have a big gap between two of my classes here in France, I don't technically have to stay at the school. I can choose to go home. If I want between my classes, I can run errands during that time, or I can just stay at school and choose to work if I want to. Or if my classes ended at noon, for example, I could just go home and spend my time how I want, rather than staying at school until the end of school, if that makes sense. I'm trying to think what else. Maybe grading might be a little bit different, since grades are out of 20 here and they're out of 100 in the US. All right, this is probably the biggest benefit in France. So in France, you're paid for all 12 months of the year. And in the US, you can choose to have your paycheck spread out over 12 months, but you're really only paid for the months that you teach. So lots of teachers have to get summer jobs to cover their expenses, or they decide to get paid a smaller amount each month stretched over 12 months. So I think holidays are also a bit longer in France. We have 2-week vacations every 6 or 7 weeks pretty much here, and also summer break. But the start and end dates depend on where you are. This next thing, I think it kind of depends on your school, but typically in the US, teachers will have their own classroom and stay there all day, whereas in France, depending on the size of your school, how many teachers you have, a lot of the time teachers will move to different classrooms and not necessarily stay in the same classroom. The next question is how I became a teacher in France. Well, basically I came here first in 2017 with the teaching assistant program in France, where I became a language assistant. I wanted to do this program because I had only done a short study abroad program in college, university, and French was my major. I wanted to be a French teacher, and I got my teaching license. I graduated after doing a master's in education, and I felt like I wasn't really ready to teach French. You know, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. I was licensed, I had my degree, but I didn't feel as comfortable speaking the language as I thought I should be as a teacher. So I decided, and I also wanted to spend more time abroad to get to know the culture better and see what life was really like there, so I could better share that with my students, my future students. So I became an English assistant. I decided I wanted to keep improving my French, so then I did a master's in French abroad, which I loved. I moved to Paris then, and I just fell in love with life there, and I wasn't ready to leave yet. There were still so many places I wanted to explore. I was having so much fun abroad. Then I became a lectrice, which is like a university English teacher, not a professor, but like a language instructor. So I taught mostly speaking classes, and I have a couple of videos and a blog post all about that that I'll link below for more information. And so basically, I had been teaching English in France for a few years now and thought, okay, you know, I want to be a full-time classroom teacher. I have a teaching degree. It's not a French teaching degree, however, but I still wanted to keep living in France. So I looked for schools, like international schools that could hire me, that didn't need me to be a titulaire, which is basically being a licensed teacher in France. Okay, so I can't actually get a license to teach public school in France because I'm not European. As an American though, I could technically do the concours for the CAFEP, which is it's the same as the CAPES, which is basically the examinations to become a teacher. So I looked for a school, an international school that could hire me without that French teaching license, that would say, hey, like, okay, we'll hire you on a contractual basis. You have a US teaching license, you've got master's degrees, you're qualified. So not the most traditional route to becoming a teacher in France, but again, I'll link more blog posts from me and from other bloggers that talk about their experience and different paths you can take. So this is another question, and she asked what my favorite class, level, and lesson to teach are. So I actually really like middle school age kids. I think they're really funny. They're silly and quirky, but they can be really surprising sometimes. They can be really serious but fun at the same time. So I really enjoy teaching that level. And then maybe for like high school age, maybe like the last couple of years, I think are good because their English level is usually pretty good and we can tackle more serious subjects, which can be really interesting. This year I actually taught some regular lycée classes, so so English as a foreign language to French students, and I also got to teach English, like English literature writing, to Anglophone students, which is pretty fun. And I think I enjoyed teaching the literature classes more this year because it was my first time actually teaching literature. Before, it was more like English as a second language type classes, which are really fun, but I really enjoyed being able to read whole books with the students and read poetry, study Shakespeare. That was pretty fun. And my favorite lesson, I have to think about. One particular lesson doesn't come to mind. There are certain activities I really like though. So for my English as a second language classes, I love games. I love getting the students up on their feet and speaking. One of them is called Trainwreck, which I think I turned this into a English game, but I think I learned this game from like college freshman orientation, like an icebreaker activity. This works when you have a smaller class, or if you can go outside, or if you have a big classroom. So basically what you do is you have students either sit or stand in a circle, and they have one thing marking where they're sitting or standing, and there's one person in the middle, and that person will say something. So it can be, you can use this at the beginning of the year as like an icebreaker activity, like how I did in college, or you can use it to practice a certain grammar point. I think I used it with my première when we were practicing conditionals and hypothetical situations, like if I were the president, I would blah blah blah. And basically one person in the middle says something, and if the others agree with them, or if they do the same thing, or if they like the same thing, you can also do it with like, I like chocolate for lower levels, you know. And the people who agree with them have to get up and move and find a new spot. So it's kind of like musical chairs in that aspect, but I think it's really fun and the students really like it. And maybe my favorite book I taught this year would be A Monster Calls. This was actually a recommendation from one of my colleagues. She taught this book last year, so I was like, oh, this is interesting. But I think the students really enjoyed it. It's different, not a typical young adult story. And I think it's got some really good life lessons in there as well. So it was also really captivating story. So I think some students who might not be like the biggest readers also really enjoyed this book. So I like doing things that the students really love too. So the next question is, how much longer do I plan to stay in France? And do I have any long-term plans? So I don't really have a lot of long-term plans. I am kind of go with the flow, see where life takes me for the moment. I am happy in France. Next year will be when I have 5 years of unbroken residency. It'll technically be my 6th year in France, but since I was an assistant for 7 months, it doesn't count because I had to go back to the US and get a new visa when I became a student. So after that, I can apply for French naturalization to become French. I think I'll apply for a long-term residency card first because that'll be easier to get. But yeah, I think it'd be really cool to become French and not have to struggle as much as an immigrant. And I mean, I'm still a very, very privileged immigrant, however. So I think I'd like to become French. After that, I can take the CAPES and become a titulaire, so I could get a French teaching license. I mean, that wouldn't be guaranteed either, but I think after working in the French system, it might be a little bit easier. But that would give me a better work status as well, and I could get a CDI, which would be like more of like a long-term indeterminable contract, I guess, like yeah, I don't know, but like kind of like tenure, I guess. So that would give me a lot of job security. If I want to stay in Paris forever, I definitely, like I said before, Paris is not super close to mountains or the beach. I mean, there's some national forests around and lovely countryside not too far from here, but I definitely would love to be somewhere where it's easier to just get up and go on a hike the same day, you know. I do really miss my family in the US as well, so I don't know, we'll see. And last question decided to move to France. So I grew up in Virginia, and I don't have a southern accent. So I grew up in Virginia, VB baby, Virginia Beach. That's probably why I keep talking about being close to the beach, because I grew up near one, and I didn't go to the beach a ton when I was younger, but you know, not living close to one, you don't realize how much you miss it and how much I used to take it for granted. Yeah, but I also have a lot of ties to New England as well, because that's where most of my family is from. And why did I move to France? So I basically touched on it a little bit earlier when I talked about how I became an English teacher. So again, I wanted to improve my French before going back to the US and teaching France and experience the culture more. But I stayed because I really appreciate the work-life balance here. I think being a teacher in the US would probably be a bit harder with the type of schedule and expectations teachers have. Not that it isn't difficult here. Oh my gosh, teaching is so hard no matter where you live, I think. You know, I really appreciate the social benefits of living in France as well. Access to affordable healthcare, great public transportation and trains. I love that I don't need to rely on a car here in France. Maybe if I lived somewhere a bit more rural, I would have to, but in Paris there's the metro, buses, trams, etc. Even when I lived in Perpignan, they did have buses. They weren't quite as regular as they are here in Paris, and there was the train, which could get me to a lot of different places. I just really love visiting places in France as well. I think it's such a beautiful country. Each region has something unique about it, whether that be a dialect or a certain type of architecture. Even like geographically, it's diverse. Like you've got beautiful rocky beaches in Normandy and Brittany, and you have little German type towns in Alsace, and in the south of France you've got the Mediterranean, and you have Provence and the really cool villages in Occitanie, and lots of other places that I didn't mention and have yet to discover. I'm not done traveling in France, and I think living in France is the best way to see the country, especially because I can take my time visiting places. I don't feel like I have to rush to visit everything all in like a week trip, and I can also, you know, visit little villages that I might not have put on my itinerary if I was just visiting temporarily. That is my Q&A. Maybe I'll do another one soon. Thanks again to those of you who asked me these questions. It was really interesting thinking about all of them, and yeah, let me know if you have other questions or if you want me to make any other types of videos on certain subjects I talked about here. And again, do not forget to check the description and check out all my blog posts if you have other questions about teaching in France or places to visit. Yeah, just check out my blog. All right. Thank you so much for watching. À la prochaine.